Hello, and welcome to English for Philosophy students. We are in our first lesson of rule number 5. And rule number 5 is, it's never let your children do anything that makes you dislike them. So never let your children do anything that makes you not like your children. Okay, so let's look at this picture, which is the beginning. It starts with a sign that talks about the common law. And you can see signs like this all over America in historical areas. And they tell us what went on in that historical area. And so there are signs like this near where I live, because I live in Virginia, which was one of the first colonies. So we have a lot of history. So let's read this. This is typical of something I might see written on a building near where I live. The common law. Here, the common law of England was established on this continent with the arrival of the first settlers on May 13th, 1607. The first charter, granted by James I to the Virginia Company in 1606, declared that the inhabitants of the colony, quote, shall have and enjoy all liberties, franchises, and immunities, as if they had been abiding and born within this our realm of England, unquote. Since Magna Carta, the common law has been the cornerstone of individual liberties, even as against the Crown. Summarized later in the Bill of Rights, its principles have inspired the development of our system of freedom under law, which is at once our dearest possession and proudest achievement. So the question is, why is this here? So first, we call this the English common law. We don't really just call it common law. So usually we say the English common law, which is the basis for the law in the United States. English common law. So the United States is an extension of the legal system of England. The common law of England was established on this continent, meaning the North American continent, with the arrival of the first settlers on May 13th, 1607. This is the Virginia colony. The first charter, granted by King James I to the Virginia Company in 1606. So the charter, for those of you who don't know how it worked, King James was thought to own all of the land. They didn't know how far America went. They had no idea how large the land was. But the King of England owned it all, and he would give a charter permission to an individual to go start a colony, or to a group of people to go start a colony, and he would give land to people. So the king was in charge. So he granted the charter to the Virginia Company to start a colony. And he said that the colonists the people who went to colonize America would have and enjoy all liberties, franchises, and immunities. Liberty is freedoms. Franchise is the ability to vote and have a voice in your government. And immunity is right to not be abused. So I am immune from search and seizure, unreasonable search by the government. I am immune from the possibility that the government would torture me. Immunities is protections. As if they had been abiding and born within this our realm of England. So, the rights and privileges of the citizenship of England, which was a major power at the time, were given to anyone in the Virginia colony. The rights of Englishmen. Since Magna Carta, the common law has been the cornerstone of individual liberty. I'm going to underscore this. The cornerstone of individual liberty, even as against the crown. So that means the common law protects the common man, even if the king doesn't approve. It gives common men rights, independent of the will of the king. Summarized later in the Bill of Rights. So these rights, later they wrote a document, Bill of Rights, to summarize those rights. Its principles have inspired the development of our system of freedom under law, which is at once our dearest possession and our proudest achievement. This is something America has largely forgotten. Our children have not been taught in the public school any of this history, and they don't know it and they don't understand it. But I will briefly explain to you. Freedom under law. Darn. Freedom under law. Once, when I was in college, there was a student, a foreign exchange student from Hong Kong, and we began to speak of politics. And one of the Americans said something about our freedoms and liberties. And the girl from China said, what you have is rule by law. What we have in China is rule by personality, by a person. And she said, rule by law is the best. And in America, our founding fathers were all, mostly, especially the ones in New England, were people of very great integrity. They were very religious. They were very moral. They were highly educated in Western civilization. And they created a political system that gave citizens complete freedom to do anything they wanted as long as what they wanted to do was good. So if you wanted to do any good thing you would not be hindered by law, ever. But there was no desire to create a political system in which people had freedom to do bad things that they wanted to do. The idea was freedom to do good. The founding fathers, the Pilgrims, had been persecuted for living out their Protestant religious beliefs. They had been persecuted even to death for refusing to live like the country around them. They wanted to live a moral Christian life which was separate from the established religions and the secular lifestyles of the countries that they sojourned in. They left one place to go to another, then another, always trying to find a place where they could live according to their Christian beliefs, good and simple, wholesome lives without interference from the government. So when they came to America, all they wanted was freedom to live a good life without a government interfering. And that was the political system that they established. They did not want to create a place of freedom to do bad things if you wanted, so long as it doesn't hurt anyone else. That is not what they had in mind. They had in mind a place where a Christian could live a Christian life, doing good, and not be interfered with by the government. The idea was the citizen is self-regulated by his own moral code and does not need a lot of law to tell him to do this or that, because his Christian character will tell him to do something even better than any law. He will always rise above civil law. That was the idea. Over recent years, the last 50 years, our culture has fallen apart, and the population is no longer moral. It is no longer religious in the way it was before. It is no longer good in the way that it was before. And as a result, our governmental system is also breaking down. It is not sufficiently restrictive to control bad people who want to do evil. In fact, the bad people who want to do evil have grabbed the reins of our government and turned the law around to persecute the people who don't want to do bad things or to approve of bad things. So now, instead of the government encouraging people to do good, the government is encouraging people to do bad and persecuting those who say no. This is what we have now, largely. So the question is, why is this in the beginning of a chapter entitled, "Don't Let Your Children Do Something That Will Make You Dislike Your Children, make you angry and hateful toward your children. Do not let your children be unpleasant brats. Brat. That's our word for children who are bad. They are brats. You brat. That means a child who is unpleasant and bad, badly behaved. So why is this at the beginning? I will tell you, and it is a bit of a spoiler. I have read of course, the entire chapter several times, and I know where it is going. It is basically going toward a thesis that says something to the effect of human beings must be self-regulated. We must be able to control ourselves. We are born with tendencies toward bad behavior, aggression, violence, theft, lying, murder. All of these are possibilities for people, and we must govern ourselves. We must have freedom under law. There must be restraint in order for us to live freely. And he is going to argue that this restraint must be developed when you are very young, preferably. The best way to develop it is in those who are very young. And in our day, parents don't know that. Parents think that it is bad to discipline children. And so he is going to talk about the psychosocial and spiritual not spiritual. It's all psychosocial. He is not talking about religion or spiritual moral character. He is totally secular, totally psychology. But I myself bring to the table also the spiritual development of moral character. These days, parents are not training their children properly. So this chapter is about that. And in English common law, we have a system of freedom under law which governs the negative side of man so that we can live together in civil harmony and so that we can live good, free lives which are good. And anyone who wants to do good can do so freely, without fear of government interfering. It's sad that we are losing this, but we are losing it because people do not have an internal monitor. So, let us continue. That was a huge, long, 20-minute introduction to a page that I almost skipped. I almost skipped this because I want to finish this chapter more quickly than the last. But we'll see. Okay, let us begin with page 1 of rule number 5. Do not let your children do anything that makes you dislike them. Dis means opposite. So, makes you not like them. First section heading, actually, it's not okay. Now this actually tells us that people are saying, it's okay, really, it's okay. And he is saying, actually, it is not okay. The actually suggests that there is a widespread prevailing opinion, a universal cultural opinion that something is okay, but actually it's not. What might that be? Let us think what maybe this will be about. Imagine you invite your friends to come to your home for dinner, and they bring their small child, 3 or 4 years old. And the child runs around and puts his hands in your stuff. He reaches and pulls books off the shelf and throws them on the floor. And the parents are like, oh, this is terrible, and they're putting the books back. And you say, it's okay, it's okay. And meanwhile, the child is running over to the aquarium where you have fish, and he is putting his hands in trying to catch the fish. And the mother runs after him while the father is putting books up to take his hands out. And he starts to cry, and she is embarrassed. And you say, it's okay, it's okay. Actually, it's not okay. So, he is getting ready to make a case that there is a prevailing opinion that something is acceptable, which is actually not acceptable, not okay. In English, when we say it's not okay, that's strong. If I say, that is not okay, that means that is unacceptable. So actually, there is quite a lot of content in this little heading that prepares us and gives us an idea of what is coming. Okay. Recently, I watched a 3-year-old boy trail his mother and father slowly through a crowded airport. He was screaming violently at 5-second intervals. And, more important, he was doing it voluntarily. He wasn't at the end of his tether. As a parent, I could tell from the tone. He was irritating his parents and hundreds of other people to gain attention. Maybe he needed something, but that was no way to get it, and his parents should have let him know that. You might object that perhaps they were worn out and jet-lagged after a long trip. But 30 seconds of carefully directed problem solving would have brought the shameful episode to a halt. More thoughtful parents would not have let someone they truly cared for become the object of a crowd's contempt. Let's move back. I want to tell you a story, something that happened to me in a similar crowded restaurant, or I think it was actually the breakfast area of a hotel. I was eating breakfast, and over across the area there was a young family with a father and a mother and a child. And the child, who was maybe under the age of 2, between 1 and 2 something, was screaming for no reason. He wasn't angry. He was just screaming sort of like for fun. And the mother ignored the behavior. She did not look at him. She did not say no or shh, nor did she say good, good, nor did she say, would you like something? She just ignored it, and the child was just making noise for fun. And it was very annoying to everybody around. And I thought to myself, that child does not know that what he is doing is bad. He does not know that it is not okay to scream loudly when others are at tables around trying to talk or listen to the news on the TV or something. And the mother is not informing him. I do not think that the mother should punish the child. I do not think she should be angry or anything. I only think she should inform the child. She should say, shh, shh, no, 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 shh, shh. She should model quiet voice, shh, 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 so the child will learn. There is nothing punitive about that. Punitive. No punishment. There is nothing punitive about that. However, I know many mothers who will not correct or inform their child that a behavior is bad. They will only affirm good behavior when the child happens to, by accident or coincidence, do something good. So in this case, we have a child who was screaming violently every 5 seconds, voluntarily. He was not in pain. I'll tell you another story. Once I was at a dance class for my daughters at our church, and my daughter was running down the hall toward the room where the class was being held, and I was already there. It was after class, so I was still speaking to the teacher, and I heard a tumble and then a scream, ah! And I ran out. I was actually somewhat angry. How could she be screaming like that? She was screaming, it wasn't like, ow! It was, ah! It was like she was having effort to scream as loud as she could. And I came up to her and said, stop that right away, stop that. And pow, it turned off. She went, and then I looked and I saw that her arm was broken. And I said, okay, I will be right back. You just stay right there. She was totally quiet. And I got the teacher and another mother, and we saw the problem, and we figured out what to do, and we explained to the child, okay, we're going to walk to the car. I want you to hold your arm like this. I took her to the doctor. We took care of it. So my daughter broke her arm, and still I told her, stop that screaming. Because even when you have a broken arm, it is not okay to scream with all of your might, in my book. Now, at least not to continue screaming. As soon as your mother is there, maybe to scream to call for help. Okay, so when a child makes a decision to scream voluntarily as opposed to involuntarily, of course, when they hurt themselves, they'll go, ah, this is involuntary. But if they go, ah, and then they go, ah, because they're angry or something, the difference between voluntary and involuntary. This child was screaming voluntarily, and the Jordan could tell from the tone, as can I. Just today, my grandson, who is Olavo's grandson, Isaac, Tiffany's son, and Pedro, had basically a fight with his mother. He is 4 years old. He wanted to take his nap on the couch instead of in the bedroom with his siblings and his mother. Everybody was going to take a nap together because if they don't sleep. So he wanted to be in another room, and she said no. And he said, "You have to tell me when I can sleep in the other room." And she said, "No, I don't." He had already taken his sleeping bag to the couch. She said, "Take the sleeping bag into the other room, set it up with your brothers and sisters right now." And he said, "I will not take my sleeping bag to the other room because you will not tell me when I will be able to sleep on the couch. I'll go, but I will not take it." And he started to walk away, refusing. And she said, "Get back here and bring the blankets to the room." And he refused. So she caught him and smacked his bottom, like once or twice. And he did this. Ah! He screamed bloody murder. And he kept screaming bloody murder. And I'm not sure what happened because I didn't see it. I was in the other room trying to take a nap. But eventually, I came out and my daughter came in and she said, "I can't believe this. It's so stupid." But he was screaming bloody murder. And so I went in, and he was in his bed in the room, on his blankets, screaming bloody murder. And I said, "Why are you screaming?" And he stopped. "Because Jackson hit me." I said, "Oh, did he?" And then my daughter said, "That's not the reason." And then he said, "Because Mommy spanked me and Jackson hit me." And I said, "That sounds terrible. I'm so sorry." And I started talking to him, and anyway, it was diffused, but it was very clear that he was screaming voluntarily. So there's a big difference. So anyway, this kid was trying to gain attention. Maybe he needed something. But, hold on. But that was no way to get it. No way. That was not the right way to get whatever he needed. Maybe he needed water, or maybe he needed food, or maybe he was cold, or maybe he was tired. But to scream in that way was no way to get what he needed. And his parents should have let him know that. It is their role. They should inform him that screaming is not the way to get whatever he wanted. Maybe he was screaming for fun, like the girl in the breakfast area. Or maybe he was screaming because he was uncomfortable and needed something. But 30 seconds of carefully directed problem solving would have brought the shameful episode to a halt. Okay, so it would take the parents 30 seconds to find out what the problem is and to tell the child what to do. If he is too hot, they could take off his jacket. If he is tired, they could say, "Stop screaming. We are almost to the hotel." Or, "You can rest. We will let you take a nap," or something. We are going to eat lunch in 10 minutes if he is hungry. But stop screaming. You do not scream. It would take 30 seconds to discern the problem and tell the child what to do. And then the child would stop the shameful screaming. This is the role of the parents. They should do it. Even if the parents are tired and jet lagged. Jet lagged means maybe they came from a time zone where they originated, it is now 1 a.m. and it's only noon in their new location. It makes you feel sick and tired after a long trip. Doesn't matter. 30 seconds and the screaming will stop. So, in other words, there is no excuse. And good parents would not have let someone they cared for become the object of a crowd's contempt. So everybody in the airport thought that child was a brat. And it's the fault of the parents who did not let the child know that his behavior was unacceptable. It was not okay. Hold on. Trying to get this. Go here. I have also watched a couple unable or unwilling to say no to their 2-year-old, obliged to follow closely behind him everywhere he went, every moment of what was supposed to be an enjoyable social visit. Because he misbehaved so badly when not micromanaged that he could not be given a second of genuine freedom without risk. The desire of his parents to let their child act without correction on every impulse perversely produced the opposite effect. They deprived him instead of every opportunity to engage in independent action. Because they did not dare to teach him what no means, he had no conception of the reasonable limits enabling maximal toddler autonomy. It was a classic example of too much chaos breeding too much order, and the inevitable reverse. I have, similarly, seen parents rendered unable to engage in adult conversation at a dinner party because their children, age 4 and 5, dominated the social scene, eating the centers out of all the sliced bread, subjecting everyone to their juvenile tyranny while mom and dad watched, embarrassed and bereft of the ability to intervene. I want to tell you a story. I visited my foster son and his wife in Germany. And they had a child that was maybe 1 year old, a little older than 1 year old. No, maybe younger. Maybe right around the age of 1. And this child did not know the word no. They had never used the word no. And whenever they wanted to change the child's diaper, he would try to get away. He would throw his legs so that he could turn, roll over. He would try to pull away. He would fight. He would scream because he didn't want to be restrained long enough to have his diaper changed. And they would say, "Oh, he is very busy, very energetic. He can't sit still for 1 minute to have his diaper changed." And they had developed a habit of kneeling with their knees on the shoulders and arms of the child to pin him down so they could change his diaper. So his hands and arms were being held by their knees as he is struggling, and he was very small, so they were able to do it. But he screamed and cried, and it looked to me like it might even hurt his hands to be trapped under their weight, strong enough that he couldn't pull them out. I mean, how much force, how much weight must you put on someone's hands so that they cannot pull them out? It looked painful. And I said to them, why do you do that? That is not good. This was kind of bad. I mean, you don't want to tell a mother what you are doing is not good. But it was not good. And she said, well, he will squirm away. I said, why don't you tell him no? And she believes in something called positive parenting. You say only yes. You wait until they do something good and you affirm, but you do not correct or say no. She believes this is the best way to raise a child. So I was speaking to my foster son, and I told him, this is not necessary. He will just tell him. My foster son said, he will not hold still. And I said, yes, you must tell him to hold still. And they thought that was crazy. This is a child, maybe not yet 1. He can't speak. They didn't think he could understand. I said, he can understand. And my foster son said, do you mean that if I change his diaper, he will run away, but if you change his diaper in the same mood, he will not run away? And I said, that is what I am saying. We will have a test, he said. So the next time the diaper needed to be changed, my foster son played with the child and got him all excited. And then he said, okay, you can change the diaper now. Because he wanted to be sure that the child wanted to run away, that he was not tired and asleep or something. So I picked up the child and I spoke to him. And I said, I'm going to change your diaper now. It is time to change your diaper now. And he was looking for his father to play. And I told my son, I need to take him to another room, but you and your wife follow and watch, but stay kind of out of sight. And so they followed and they stood in the corner, not hidden, but not involved. And I spoke to the child. I said, I'm going to change your diaper now. And we walked over, we got the diaper and the wipes, and I put him on the bed, and I said, now you lay still. And he started to do this, to begin to turn over. And I just took my finger, and I did not hold him down. I just touched him and said, no. And he laid, and I changed his diaper, and he never tried again. And after I finished, I picked him up and said, good boy, and handed him to his parents. And they were astonished. Because the idea of modern parents, number one, is that children cannot understand and they cannot do any self-control. And number two, that it is bad to constrain them, that they should live in a world of yes, with no negatives. But this is wrong. So let's read this. I have watched a couple is husband and wife, unable or unwilling. He's not sure if they don't know how to train their child or if they are intentionally not training, as my son and daughter-in-law have made a philosophical choice, either unable or unwilling to say no to their 2-year-old. obliged to follow closely. So because they do not say no, they are obliged. That means they have to. They are constrained. They must follow because the child is a danger to himself and the environment. So they must follow because they have never said no. So they must follow closely behind him everywhere he went, every moment of what was supposed to be an enjoyable social visit. So the parents were supposed to be having conversation with other adults, but they couldn't because they had to follow their little 2-year-old who was a disaster because he misbehaved so badly when not micromanaged. Micromanage means you tell him, don't touch that, put that down, don't do that, do this. You know, he has no freedom. They're controlling every movement. That is micromanaged. When not micromanaged, he misbehaved so badly that he could not be given a second of genuine freedom without risk. So, saying no enables you to give freedom. If the child knows he is not allowed to touch, he can have freedom. My grandchildren and my own children, we taught them when they were very small, under the age of 2, as soon as they could walk, we taught them to put their hands behind their back in the store and look with their eyes, not with their hands. And as a result, they can walk freely and look at everything in the store. And the people in the store are not afraid and nervous because the children's hands are behind their back. Before the age of 2, our children do this. They do it now. Any child that can walk must keep his hands behind his back in the store. And they do. But this child could not have any freedom. So we have the desire of parents. Okay, hold on. The desire of parents to let their child act without correction. So this is the desire of the modern parent, that a child should be allowed complete freedom to do everything and not be told no. This is the same desire of the sexual revolution, where people want their kids to be able to have sex with anybody without consequences. It's the same kind of thing. You want your child to be able to do anything he wants without negative consequences. It's unrestricted license. So the desire of parents to allow their child to act without correction on every impulse perversely produced the opposite effect. So their desire to give complete freedom results in complete, they have to control him. He has no freedom at all. He must be micromanaged because he is dangerous. So perversely means it does the opposite of what they wanted. In their desire to give unrestricted freedom, they are condemning him to having no freedom, not 1 second of genuine freedom. It has a bad result. It produces the opposite of freedom. They are depriving him of every opportunity to engage in independent action. My kids, with their hands behind their back, can shop. They can go and see something, and then they can come and say, Grandma, Grammy, that's what they call me, can we buy this? And then they walk over and they look at it, and I look at it, and I make a decision. They have freedom because they can keep their hands behind their back. they don't touch. They have independent action very young. Because the parents did not dare to teach him what no means, he had no conception of the reasonable limits that would enable him to have maximal toddler autonomy. Because they won't teach him no, he can have no autonomy. It was a classic example of too much chaos breeding too much order. So, too much chaos is the child going and touching everything because he does not say no to himself. Breeding too much order is being controlled. Every step of the way he's being controlled by his parents because he has no internal limits. And the inevitable reversal, not enough control when they won't say no, breeds too much chaos. I have similarly seen parents rendered unable to engage in adult conversation at a dinner party, because their children, aged 4 and 5, dominated the social scene. In the olden days, we had a phrase, children should be seen and not heard. So children should sit silently, eat, and listen. But not blah, 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 blah. We are trying to teach the grandchildren this. But some people feel that is a horrible, oppressive rule. But really, it makes the parents happy, the adults happy, and it enables the children to listen and learn. Not only with their speech, but also their behavior. Eating the centers out of the bread and subjecting everyone to their juvenile tyranny. So they may say, I want more gravy, give me gravy, gimme, gimme, gimme. Or maybe if there's only one special roll for each person, they want to grab 2 or 3 for themselves. And then the guest will say, it's okay. I don't need one. Let him have it. It's not okay. While mom and dad watch, embarrassed. They're embarrassed because in their worldview, children are good. And if their child behaves this way, it means their child is bad. And they want to be proud of their child. In their worldview, they have done everything. They have been so patient to enable the child to express his goodness. And he is not doing it. And they don't really understand why, so they are embarrassed. Plus, it makes them look like bad parents. Also, they are bereft of the ability to intervene. That means they have lost. They have been stripped of the ability to intervene. Parents have no idea what to do. I will tell you one more story, and we'll stop here. When my children were young, I had a friend who had children the same age. And she was asking me and some other mothers, how do you get your child not to get into the cookies and the sweets? And one mother said, well, just put them up high. And the mother said, oh, my children will climb on a chair to get to the cookies. And the other mother said, well, put them on top of the refrigerator. So that's very high, not just on the counter where the sink is. And she said, oh, they will climb onto the counter where the sink is to climb up to get them off of the refrigerator. How can we stop them from doing that? And I realized the problem is not about cookies. If your children are climbing onto the kitchen counter and then up high to get something that you have put totally out of their reach. It is a problem of disobedience. This mother was bereft of the ability to enforce reasonable limits. This is a very common problem. And it is a problem which is caused by the parenting classes and the society which forbids people from disciplining their children and equates discipline with punishment and punishment with abuse. So we're out of time for now, but this is the idea. So we will speak again next time about this. See you later.